Hi, it is noon on Wednesday, and that must be, it must mean it's Writing Wednesday. I'm Janet Fitch. I'm a novelist and writing teacher, and I come on Facebook every Wednesday at noon to talk about issues of writing and answer your questions. So if you have questions, we're live, so leave them in the comments and I will work my way around to them. Today I am answering reader questions that have been sent to me during the week. And if you want to send questions during the week rather than live, save them up. Write them in comments. I always see them, and I will save them and write and answer them the following week. I might have a whole show around it, so be my guest. Hope things are going well in quarantine. If you're quarantining, I hope you're being considerate of others and shared public spaces. We're seeing a lot of pretty infantile behavior. And Americans, we're very freewheeling, but we also have our downsides. And we're seeing a lot of that. So here's a question from a reader. How would I write a sick scene in a book? I feel like I'm writing the same words over and over, so I just need a clever and good way to write it. That is a really good question. How do you write a sick scene? So at first I wanted to make sure that they didn't mean sick as in amazing. No, they meant illness, how to write about somebody who is ill. And this is a wonderful opportunity to write kind of altered states. I don't know if you've, hi Christy, I don't know if you've ever been sick, had a fever, kind of semi-delirious. It is a wonderful opportunity for getting out of the pedestrian in your book and have somebody who is in a fever and how things affect them. This is the kind of thing that it's taking notes when you're sick or when somebody close to you is sick and writing down what you see and hear and putting it in your notebook in portraits. Super, super helpful. One of my, I can remember a particular illness where I had been reading, the first time I read Under the Volcano, and I had a fever. Was it Under the Volcano? I think so. No, it wasn't. It was The Red and the Black by Stendhal. I think I also read Under the Volcano. And how it affected the vividness of that book and how the book started weaving its way through my consciousness even when I wasn't reading it. I could see when you're writing a sick person, if they're reading something that starts to have a bleed, or listening to music that starts having a bleed into their waking light, into their consciousness in other ways. That is a super interesting way of dealing with writing about illness, about a sick person. We remember that, and I want to say this is Virginia Woolf, but I'm not sure because I'm not researching, I'm just thinking aloud with you. Somebody said that illness is another country, and we forget, hi Kimberly, we forget that we have been here, that as soon as you get sick, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. I don't feel good. I'm in bed. This is my world. I don't know what's going on in the outside world. It's like you've crossed into another country, and you feel like people who aren't sick don't know where you're at and what's going on. And you yourself, when you get better, forget that world. So start taking notes. Hi, Jill. Start taking notes when you're ill. Hi, Sayward. When you're ill, start taking notes. not just how I feel, the ache here, the ache here, the ache here, but also those fleeting thoughts. Poetry, a lot of poetry is written about illness that really unlocks the moment. All of Robert Louis Stevenson's poems, when I was sick and lay in bed, I had two pillows at my head and the sick child, because in those days there was no treatment. So people were, hi Ruthie, because people, hi Toby, that people were sick and just were isolated in the home for months and months. And those kids really learned how to entertain themselves. And many of them became writers because they had to learn to amuse themselves at length for months at a time, sometimes a full year. Scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, all of these diseases that we don't have. Hi, Nadia. And what goes on in your mind as you're lying there sweating? You get the physical reactions. There's scents, smells, the sheets get wet, what the sounds that come to you from other places. You can't see what's going on, but you can hear other people who are not sick, doing their thing outside, and you're still in that bed in the darkened room, sometimes the windows are open. Are the windows open? Are they closed? Where's the light coming from? Does the person have a headache? Dim the lights, or are they just feeling lousy and want to have some access to the outside world? So the windows are open. Is the door to the hall open or closed? Do they lie on the couch and watch? What do they want to watch on television? I don't want to watch anything with any conflict whatsoever. I'll dig up my daughter's old cartoons. I'll watch like Aladdin or something, unless there's too much rushing around. And sometimes all I can do is listen to David Sedaris on audio. But think about what these transient, it's an altered state. And that is a really good, really welcome move for a novelist. I always try to have altered states in my novels. I don't know if you remember, but there is drug use in every book, or drinking, or mental illness. Any altered state is a really good, really rich in possibilities for your book. So the senses are so heightened when you're ill. So if you've been doing the sense exercises, smell and sound and ambient sound, near sound, far sound, dimensional sound, the intimate landscape, which the hand is the actor, things that can be touched. When you're ill, that's it. Maybe you can see out a window. Maybe, and it's always good to have a window in a scene, but how do you feel about what you're looking at? When you're sick, you're looking at it hour after hour after hour, and you might make up a story. I have this group of 5 tall, thin junipers in a neighbor's house up the hill that I can see from my bed when I'm sick. And they look like people. Van Gogh said that he used the junipers or the poplars or whatever they were in the landscape, that they were the people in his landscapes. And I see them as a group of people, a group of women, and when the wind blows, their heads nod together and apart like they're talking, like they're gossiping. And I imagine what they're saying to each other. So any landscape that you look at when you're ill can come very much to life, like Van Gogh, I'm sure it was for him. But the tabletop, and then the middle level of landscape, the personal level, that's going to be the bedposts, what's across the room, things you can't reach, things that look nice, but now you're really sick of them. And then the intimate level, that clutter of junk on your bedside table or the dresser, whatever's next to your bed, what's on the bed. you get hot, you get cold, the weight of the blankets becomes very important, the folds, and then you have time slows down, so you actually have time to watch the light move. God, read the waves, the kind of attention that Virginia Woolf gives to the descriptions of light and the sea in the waves. That is something you could really use in a sick room. You know, I have a childbirth scene in Chimes of Lost Cathedral, and she's in a bathhouse giving birth in a very backward peasant situation, and she watches the light, little lozenges of light that come through the walls, move across the floor. I mean, that's the kind of thing you do when you're sick, is you just like, has any time passed whatsoever? Oh, look, you know, the light, the dot of light used to be on the wall at eye level, and now it's moving across to the other wall. The way the light changes, the colors change. Dreams are very vivid, and, you know, fever dreams, and sometimes your character can perceive something that they actually need to know and probably wouldn't have access to any other way by a dream in a fever when they're sick. Just like, you know, doing a drug scene or something in a novel, you know, suddenly your character can remember something. They have no way that they could have remembered that before. But in that supremely altered state, they do remember it. So here's April says, I think inconsistencies of what the sick person says or does with what is going on in the environment can help show disorientation. Yeah, that's a very feverish kind of thing to do. Things you remember, things that the forced stasis will send the mind back into memory in a really interesting way. But it's that, when you're really sick, it's that one moment following another moment. You know, have I gotten anywhere? There's a lot of memoir more about illness that is really, you know, very interesting stuff. And it's part of the human condition. When you're well, you forget that illness is another country and that you do visit it occasionally. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. Ugh. I remember lying on the bathroom floor and not wanting to go back to bed because it's just like, I'm just going to be using that toilet again. Why get up? And the tile feels good, you know, when you have a fever, press against your cheek. And then you notice, like, what's under the bathroom cabinet. You notice weird things. So there's a kind of a surrealistic quality as well to a sick scene, a scene of illness, that gives a lot of potential for the writer. What else can I say? Yeah, and a sick older person, you know, they're very patient. If you have a lifetime where occasionally you've been ill, you know, they're very patient, and the way memory comes in and out. If you read Paul Harding's Tinkers, there's an ill grandfather, and the way time moves back and forth, especially for an older person. It's fantastic. And you can also fragment in a really interesting way. And that's kind of the signature of our times, is fragmentation anyway, because glimpses of stuff. Because when you're sick, it's all the same. You're watching Green Acres on TV, and then, you know, you remember something you forgot to do, or you're trying to remember, is there something I forgot to do? And then that eats at you, and then that feeds into a memory, and that feeds in, and then suddenly lunch is here. You know, who is taking care of the sick person? What is their relationship? I think that there's often surprises about the patient's feeling about the caretaker. Somebody who maybe had been discounted earlier on, and now that the person is dependent upon them, it's like, oh, this person is saving my life. I always thought that they were X, Y, and Z. And, where is all the kind of people that I normally love, the super brilliant, witty, whatever. Well, they're off pursuing their whatever they do. And who has the time to take care of someone? It brings up a lot of issues that people are thinking about right now. So I think it's a very appropriate question. All right. Anything else on illness? But use those senses. Things smell differently. Things taste differently. Food you normally like is like, if it's highly spiced, it's like, ugh, I don't want to eat anything but crackers and ginger ale and cold cereal. All the senses are super heightened. The skin. What does it feel like to have a fever? To be plunged into cold, go into cold water trying to bring the fever down. What about altered states in a character without illness, drugs, alcohol, like a movement into subconscious? Yeah, definitely that's that would be part of your novel. That'd be part of the fabric of the novel. But it's interesting to have a change within the novel so that it gives the writer a chance to stretch other muscles and gives the reader a break. I have a scene in Chimes of Lost Cathedral that my character there was a big interaction with somebody who is supplying illegal cocaine to war-torn Petrograd. Very illegal, very big business to the soldiers. And there's some that was rescued by her. And it's her birthday, and she does it up. And suddenly she's not cold and frightened and hungry for a short time, and goes outside and looks at the world differently. It gives the reader a place to breathe out. All right, I have another question. This is a question about a bigger, kind of a big question. What is the meaning of life type of question. Why should you keep striving for greatness if you're mediocre at everything? All right, I'd like to lift that one out of your heavy heart, clearly, because everybody's mediocre when they start. Everyone. God, I think of my first stories. Those, they were not good. They were very short because I didn't know what else to do with them. Once I had, here's the character, here's what happens, the end. And it's just like, I didn't have any tools to open anything up, to examine anything. I had no idea what to do, that language was something to be played with. I just didn't know anything. So I was mediocre for a long time. A lot of rejections, It was 20 years until White Oleander was published, after I started writing. That everybody's mediocre, every beginner is mediocre. Or worse. Lousy. You might as well say lousy. And you learn, and you pick up tools, and you persist, and you get better, and you read, and you learn, and you practice, and you strive for greatness even when you're mediocre. Well, especially that's why at first I aspired to be mediocre. My writing was so bad. Exactly. It's just like, wow, if I could just even describe a room, I would have just been thrilled to death. Beginners make progress more quickly. So that's an upside to being a beginner. It doesn't take much to be much better when you're a beginner. It's like, wow, I could do that. Yeah. Oh, wow. Suddenly you're like a lot better. The further along you go, the smaller the changes will be, because you already have mastered so much. Then those last, steps, and there's never a last step. That's the other thing about writing, is you're always sort of a beginner. You're always learning, creating new tools, figuring it out. That's why it's something that lasts a lifetime. I get bored. If I can master something, I'll work like crazy to master something. But once I master it, I don't want to do it anymore. It kind of bores me. On to the next thing. Whereas writing, you can never master. There's always more to do. So it keeps us interested. It keeps us trying. It keeps us learning, trying something new, trying something different, taking on, reading, interviews with other writers. I do it. I want to know. I'm still learning, still picking stuff up. So you keep striving for greatness when you're mediocre at everything. I don't care, you're writers. I don't care if you're a mediocre cook or gardener, or whether you don't dress so well. And it's like, mediocre at everything, I mean, we have to accept that we're going to be mediocre at 80% of the things we do. I mean, anybody who feels they have to be fantastic at everything is just striving for nervous breakdown. What did Janis Joplin say? It's like, you only have to do one thing well in this life. And I think it's nice if you can both do something well, like your art form or work or something like that, plus be a good friend and, a really good partner. But I don't think you have to do everything well. One thing well. Just think about Janis Joplin. You just have to sing really well, and then hopefully also have good relationships and be a good partner. But in your activities, if you're writing, just try to be a good writer. Doesn't have to be good at everything, but that's not what the person means. I don't think. I think that's just a depressed cry for help here. But why strive for greatness if you're mediocre? Have you ever taken archery? If you take archery, they teach you to shoot high, because if you shoot high, you're going to hit something. Whereas if you shoot low, you're just going to hit the ground. So even if you are, would be happy to be, a pretty good genre fiction writer, try to be great. Whoever you consider great, it can't help but serve you. Say I want to write, like kind of, what's a light genre would you call a rom-com, romantic comedy. I want to write a romantic comedy. But if I strive to be great, I might read Shakespeare's romantic comedies. I might read other people who have just done divine romantic comedies, Jane Austen, and other writers who I just consider great, and learn from them, so that when I go to do my modest piece of work, I can bring little things in that I've learned from these great writers. And maybe I'm writing somewhat better romantic comedy than most people, because I have these other nutrients in my soil. I have these other minerals. I've been eating really well and working out, and I just do it better. So be generous with your early efforts, but push to learn and keep getting better. And a lot of getting better is opening yourself up to critique. And critique is, people who are mediocre and remain mediocre are people who never get the input. So they just go as far as they can comfortably go with themselves, and then it's like they're misunderstood, or everybody's a jerk, or they lay it off on other people. But at some point you're reading to be read, and you can benefit from opening yourself up to critique. You have to have you develop a very good sense of who to listen to, what purpose you're getting their critique for. Not everybody's going to like what you do, so you have to avoid those people. The best critique is going to be by somebody who basically likes what you're doing and then has insight to how to make it better. So if you're in a workshop of, say, 12 people, which, this is probably not about workshop. This is about choosing whose critique to ask for. But in a workshop, there's going to be 3 people who just hate what you do. They just hate you. They don't hate you, but they hate the world that is in your imaginative world. They don't like you. They don't like your world. They don't like your people. They don't. So their critique is always going to be destructive. Even if you followed every single thing they ask you to do, they would still hate it, because they don't like your imaginative turn of mind. So never ask those people for critique. And if you're in a group and they're going to critique, just kind of close the curtains. Don't argue with them. Just kind of like close the curtains. It's like, oh yeah, there's Bob. He hates my stuff, okay. And then you say, thank you, thank you for your opinion. Then there's going to be half of the people who are going to say, who sometimes like it, sometimes don't. It's hard to know whether to trust them, because they can be right they can be as wrong as much as they can be right. So it's tricky to trust them. Sometimes you hear them say something, though, and it's like, it goes in, like if you shoot pinball, you could, when it goes into the socket, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I usually don't like what Janie said, but gee, that's right. So you learn to feel it in yourself. Hi, Shona. You learn to feel it in yourself, whether they're, something you worried about and hope that nobody would notice. That's always a good thing when they do notice it. We hate it, but that is important feedback. And then there'll be like 2 or 3 people in that workshop who like what you do. They're excited about your stuff. They want to hear more. And those people's critique is the essential critique, because they like it. They want it to be more itself. So it's like, oh, really like this story so far, but I'm not believing, Sheriff Mel's approach. I don't believe this. It's like, okay, there's my reader. That's my reader. And you want to, and then you have to open yourself up to that crit and take it to heart. If they think something's not right, you have to trust that. There's also the reader who is, this is a good thing. Brenda says, I've read somewhere that it's wise to pay attention when people dislike something in your writing, but be cautious about the remedies offered. Yeah, good critique is not solving your problem. It is pointing out that there is a problem and trusting the writer to fix it. That is a super, super important. And then there's another kind of reader who I call, you might call a clean reader, or a non-specialist. Sometimes you want to give your work to someone who's not a writer, who is not in anybody's critique group, maybe isn't even that good a reader, somebody who hasn't read like Virginia Woolf or something, just a regular person, and let them read it. And what I do is I have them write on it. When they're bored, just like come out and say, this is boring, or I'm losing interest. And when they like it, when the scene is working, have them just write in the margin, yeah, working. And I have them show me where they put it down. So where did I get up and get a sandwich? Or where did I go to bed? And then really take a look at those places, because those will be your soft spots. Those are places that people can put the book down. And they do want to be able, and everybody who's read a book, do want to sometimes go to sleep or get up and get a sandwich. But as the writer, you want to take out all of that. You don't want to give them place to put the book down. You want to hear, I stayed up till 4 a.m. God damn you. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, So it's really good to know where they put it down. But you cannot break through mediocrity without input. You just can't do it. Usually what happens is we get to a point, we've gone as far as we can on our own. We're bashing our head against the wall, and we're changing things. We're making it different. It's changing for the different. And those are the people who might work on a story for 20 years. It's like, no, don't keep writing the same thing. You need to move along. So it's how do you break that impasse? How do you break that ceiling where you've got to the top of what you know? You have to be able to recognize it. I'm not getting anywhere. And that's where you come to Writing Wednesdays. You look at all those videos and try to internalize those. You read books about writing. You read books about art forms that might inspire you. You do exercises. You take classes. You do whatever it takes to get that extra information. I was getting rejected for years, 9 years. I had become somewhat better writer, but I still couldn't get published to save my life. 9 years of my life. Rejections every week. What's wrong with my writing? Because I was on my own. I'd never taken classes. I'd never done anything like that. I got a rejection that said, good enough story, but what's unique about your sentences? And because I had been bashing my head against my own mediocrity for so long, that when a piece of valuable information came in, it took me a while to even understand what he was saying, because I was a history major and I didn't know much about writing. And then when I finally got it, oh my God, the sentence, I have to write sentences, not just the story. And then how do you challenge that? How do you make up for that? And I found a poet who taught fiction writing. And I started studying with the poet, because poets win it word by word. They can't just have, a punch up in a bar and, let the action carry it. They need the sentences. So here's a question. Since you're discussing critique, what are your thoughts about a CP, or workshop partner, who rewrites passages, dialogue, or sentence of another work when critiquing? Who rewrites passages? Well, if that's the way they work, you can tell them it's not as useful as just pointing out the problems. I am known to cross things out and go through somebody's manuscript and just take out whole hunks of stuff that are unnecessary. And when somebody does it to me, and I trust them, I am so grateful for the cuts, because I'm a maximalist. I produce, but I'm not as good at cutting. So if somebody just takes a pen and goes through a paragraph, it's like, thank you. But rewriting your stuff, it's better if you say, instead of rewriting my stuff, point to a problem, and then you can give me an example, like too much dialogue, pare down, like this. and then do a little rewriting so you can see it. It's like an art teacher. You do your precious little drawing, whatever, and the art teacher comes around and takes their charcoal and just redraws the bunny. It's like, wow, you just totally screwed up my picture. On the other hand, I can see now what you're talking about. So that it's about learning, not about producing something precious. The stuff we produce isn't that precious. It's learning how to write and to produce something good. What you're writing is the byproduct of what you know. And what you know is the important thing. Your own development as an artist is the important thing. And then the writing will come. All right. So that any books of how to make sentences sing. Take a look at my Writing Wednesday on the sentence. Very helpful. Making sentences longer, varying the length, using dependent clauses. Every word is, considered. And avoiding the cliche, watching rhythms, reading it out loud. Books on how to make sentences sing would be reading writers whose sentences sing and then taking a couple of sentences out and looking at how they're put together. That's the way to do it. So don't read about it. Really use good writing and pull it apart and investigate how it's put together. Let's see. Yeah, it's hard not to be sensitive in a workshop, even if you're getting really good critique. I tend to be a crier, so I tell people, and when I'm teaching a workshop, I tell the students, that it's very emotional to have somebody critique you, and when I am critiqued, I'm a crier, and I'll just tell the workshop, if I'm working, with people, or when I used to do that, I just say, I'm a crier, just ignore me if I'm crying. I don't care. I'm still listening, and I still want that information. I don't care how painful it is. I do not care. I just want to know, and I'm willing to be completely vulnerable and crying and don't even care. I just want to hear it. Do you still like A Writer's Book of Days by Judy Reeves? You mentioned in a Fullerton workshop a long time ago, and it still helped me. Yeah, I worked with Judy years ago, and that's a wonderful book of prompts and all kinds of stuff. Really, really useful. All right. So that's about mediocre and greatness. Always strive for, unless you're the kind of person who it gets depressing to think about Virginia Woolf when you're writing. It's like, oh, this is never going to be Virginia Woolf, ugh. Everybody pulls water out of their own well. Everybody has to sing with their own voice. You can't be Virginia Woolf. There already was one. It would be cliche if you tried to do that. You have to pull it out of yourself. And George Saunders said that, he idolized these various writers. They were the mountains that you had to climb. And then when he looked at what he did, it was like this little pile of shit that was George Saunders. And it just was so hard on him until he realized, but that is George Saunders. That's what I do. That's what I do. And maybe that's not so bad. The world needs all of those voices. It doesn't just need Tolstoy. We have to get over this monopoly thinking that there are only 5 great writers and that's all you need. Only read the Bible, I only read Tolstoy. It's sort of the same. The world needs all of these voices, all of these points of view. So it's how to make what you're doing, how to own what you can do, how to not be so down on yourself for not being somebody else, because you can't be somebody else. You have to pull your own water out of your own well, and you have to just get better at pulling the bucket up. and have faith that there's a whole aquifer under there. So keep striving for greatness and be gentle with the results that you keep pulling it out, you keep getting better, and nobody ever arrives at greatness. I mean, Tolstoy was just tormented, and a great soul, but and ambitious as all get out. Most writers are extremely ambitious who get somewhere with their work. We are competitive. There's a wonderful book by Hemingway on writing, and he writes about how he thinks of his writing as boxing matches with the various, oh, let me grab this book. On writing. Hemingway was a piece of work, but this just always cracked me up, is that he used boxing metaphors for himself. So he always thinks of himself in competition, in a manly competition with another writer, and he can't get away from this boxing metaphor. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, so funny. So he moves his way, and he like punches out Henry James, and he punches out, Forster and whoever. But then he gets into the ring with Tolstoy, and let's see if I can find it briefly. It is so funny. And he says that, that Tolstoy is slow on his feet, but you have to go 16 rounds with that guy because he's got stamina like mad, and you can land all the blows you like, but he hits you once and you're down. So he had such a physical feeling for his competition, and it's not only competition; it's your peers. It's, in his mind, that was his friends. That was the world of his. That was his world, was the great writers. Oh, why can't I find it when I'm looking for it? It's just too funny. Anyway, I always like to read the Paris Review, write interviews with writers, picking up bits and pieces, and this is just too funny. He's so egotistical, and he hates women, so just be prepared. Well, he downplays women. He calls the student writers like the mice. What a jerk. But who cares? So here's another question. As a full-time writer of fiction, what's your highest aspiration? I love that. What's the highest aspiration? My highest aspiration is to help people tune in to the world on a level that they usually don't have time for. Because I'm a writer, and I make it my profession to stop and notice. Not just notice things, but to capture them, to write them down in the notebooks, keeping those notebooks, write them down. And when I'm writing, there's a Writing Wednesday on meaning that you might be interested in looking at, either here or on the YouTube station. I'm always trying to move to what things mean, to a deeper, like, what is my how can I say this? My writing teacher, Kate Braverman, used to say, if you can have your character think about dinner or think about God, have them think about God. Which means I don't really read to just for the adventure and running around and, who's sleeping with who and stuff. I want to understand the world better. I want to read somebody who who tells me what things mean. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be dependent? What does it mean to love someone you don't trust? What does it mean to lose your home? What does it mean, to be alone? And to make a bigger statement about the world. And then when I read the reactions of people to my work, people will say, I've had that. I've thought that too, but I never kind of put my finger on it. That's what I'm writing for, is to kind of crystallize some corner of life for someone. I'm very interested in the senses, writing for the senses, so that people are more aware of their physicality. Oh my God, now, these days, when we're kind of locked down, except for the essential workers who are locked down in their own way, to be able to give you a summer day, to be able to give you the puzzle of the sky through jacaranda branches. I remember long ago, White Oleander, I had described something, and a woman wrote that she looked into her child's eyes, a certain color of eyes, maybe they were brown, and she saw them through the language that I had used to describe somebody's eyes. And she said, I saw my child differently. I saw his eyes differently. If I can make somebody, if I can help focus the world for somebody, if I can write a book that somebody could take it on a spaceship, not Elon Musk, but somebody could take it on a spaceship and remember Earth, remember the smells, remember the colors, remember what it felt like to be with other human beings. So that even the day comes where brains in a jar, the essence of human experience will still be in there somewhere. That's my ambition. So if you say you read Ulysses, you could recreate 1906 Dublin from that book, and the interiors of people, and the beauty of physical life. So that's why I pound the senses. Anytime anybody wants to talk to me about writing, I'm always like, you have to start with the senses, start with the body, start with the senses. And so writing about illness, of course, that is a wonderful thing to do. Really cool. Yeah, Sayward had a professor who was saying that, compared her work to Hemingway, called Women Without Men. At the time, I took it as a compliment. Yeah, some of these older writing teachers that we had, especially as girls back in the day, maybe I was lucky that I didn't have that, and I was a history major, and historians are a whole different thing. That I kind of stepped aside from that. All right, so we have one other question here, which is from Claudia. I think Claudia is watching right now, who asked if I wrote the poetry in Chimes of Lost Cathedral. Yes. I didn't write Akhmatova's poetry. I didn't write Mandelstam or Mayakovsky's poetry. None of the poets who were actually poets. Those were translated mostly by my friend Boris Drelyuk, who's a wonderful translator, and some of the people that translators he hooked me up with. But I wrote, well, I can't even say I wrote the poems that are in there. The character wrote the poems that are in there. I don't know. My characters can write poetry when I can't write poetry. I don't know how that works. I'm learning to write poetry for myself. But my characters, because they're a subset of myself and they're also different, I know what they've read. I know what their influences would be at the period that they're writing. My character Marina, is a Russian poet in, during the Russian Revolution, 1917, 18, 19, 20. I know what she read in school because I looked it up. I looked up the poet Marina Tsvetaeva, a little bit older than her, but I learned from her memoirs, like, what did girls, bright girls of that era, read in school? So I did my research. I read those poets. They happened to be the poets, and then I read the poets that were popular when, in the present day of the book. So I love, and there's a silver age of Russian poetry. So I read all those poets, and I knew which poets affected her the most. So I wrote in the style, if I could, as well as I could, in the style of the people that she would have formed her idea of poetry. So the research and the writing go back and forth, especially historically, when you start to look at people's influences. Let's see. So there we go. There's a bit of advice about writing illness, about ambition, about mediocrity, or giving yourself a break while you're learning, and not resting in mediocrity. You don't want to do that, but you also don't want to excoriate yourself for not being a finished product, because you're never going to be a finished product, but you have to keep moving. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the week, and write well, and we'll see you next week.